Okay, I can't wrap up a theory of everything without talking about free will, so let's just touch on that quickly. Haha. Now, we'll eventually do a whole chapter on this, but let's just go over a few of the ways you can talk about free will. I'll start with the quickest way you can deal with the question, do we have free will? If you're really short on time, you can just point out that the fail rate for New Year's resolutions is like 90%, and then you can drop mic and walk away. You have sufficiently answered the question. So that's if you're in a hurry. And this leads right into the next way that we can talk about free will. Because what the New Year's resolution fail rate exposes is not so much do you have free will, but how well do you know you? What the New Year's resolution fail rate reveals is that most people don't know themselves very well, and so they mispredict themselves. This is most likely because very roughly about 95% of you is not conscious you, and the roughly 5% of you that is conscious you is not driving the car. Obviously. Of course, the 95% unconscious you is driving the car. Conscious you doesn't even know how to drive the car. The manual is too big for conscious you to read, and the reaction time of conscious you is definitely not up to the task. At best, conscious you is sitting in the driver's seat giving direction suggestions, and sometimes unconscious you will take your suggestion if it feels like it. The more famous analogy is that of the rider on the elephant. Conscious you is the rider, unconscious you is the elephant. And so you better get to know your elephant, because it's more you than conscious you. And some people get to know their elephant better than others, and so they predict their elephant's will better than others. And this allows them to work with their elephant better than others. And this in turn gives them more credibility and sway with their elephant. So that's another way to look at free will. But I am the ordinary language philosopher, so I'm supposed to approach the problem of free will by looking at how the people use the term free will, which I have done, and what I discovered is they don't. People don't use the term free will in their daily lives or in normal conversation. Philosophers and theologians use the term free will, and lawyers and judges sometimes use the term free will, but regular people don't, unless they have decided to engage in a discussion about philosophy or theology. So the term free will is not a term of the people. It wasn't born ground up. It is one of those rarer cases of a term that enters our lexicon top down, placed there by theologians originally, and then adopted by Western philosophers, and then by lawyers and judges. So the standard OLP method of finding the meanings of words by looking at how the people use them doesn't work with the term free will because the people don't use it. And it's important to note that this extremely contentious debate is just about this one term, free will. There are professional philosophers out there who take a position called free will skepticism. And none of these free will skeptic philosophers make the claim that humans don't make decisions and choices. And they all accept that there is a difference between doing something on purpose and doing something by accident. And there is a difference between being coerced externally and not being coerced. The free will skeptics only critique the term free will and the concept free will as this thing that you make your choices with. So nobody disputes that humans make choices. The actual term free will was invented by the Christian Church to solve a logical problem with their theology where a perfect loving God creates a creature in his own image that immediately falls from perfection, flips off its loving creator, and sets out to do all kinds of horrible things. There seems to be an obvious logical problem with that story, and the idea that God gave us free will fixes that problem. I mean, no it doesn't, but they say that it does. But if we look at the people's language that the people invented, we see something quite different than a belief in this thing called free will. Yes, people do say, I chose this or I decided that, but they don't add, with my free will. They say, I chose this because, and I decided that because. If you ask people why they did something, they present causes for why they did it. Here's how the people actually talk. They say things like, it made me laugh. I fell in love. She made me cry. I was brought to tears. Something came over me. I was drawn to it. I was compelled to act. Fear came over me. I was struck by the urge, struck by the muse. I did that thing because of something else that happened before it. When asked why we chose this or decided that, we begin our answer with the word because, as in, my choice was caused by. So the people don't use this top-down injected term free will at all, but rather the people's language is filled with evidence that the people are well aware that they are driven, that they are a passenger on the elephant, riding the way. So the term free will is good for theologians, I guess. Philosophers should drop it because it's incoherent and non-explanatory, and so it's useless to even judges and lawyers. They don't have to ask, did you do this of your own free will? They can just ask, were you coerced? No need to invoke this term that the church invented to acquit God of responsibility for the sins of his creation. And then there's this group of philosophers called compatibilists, who are trying to save this church-invented term because they think that without the idea of free will, there is no basis for moral responsibility. But of course there is, and it's, you guessed it, wise self-interest.